There is a massive opportunity right now for small contractors to use AI. And I'm not talking about the hypey, flashy AI. I mean, just the boring stuff like the admin, the email, the proposals, contract reviews, data reports, and all that kind of stuff. So that is actually where AI is genuinely useful right now. And it doesn't come with a big price tag, which is awesome. So today I'm going to walk through how to actually get started, how to pick a tool and the right tool, how to use it properly so you get a good output and not garbage, and then how to go from one-off tasks to full workflows that save you some serious time across your business. And by the end of this, you will know exactly what to do. So if you're a small contractor and you're doing a lot of the work yourself, like estimating, running jobs, chasing payments, writing reports, managing subs, all of that sort of stuff, and you haven't had the chance to start exploring AI, or it feels overwhelming and you just haven't really tried it, then this is going to be exactly for you. So let's jump into it. Now, the mistake. So now where I see a lot of people go wrong is it's not that they pick the wrong tool. It's just that they don't actually use it properly. And then they open up ChatGPT, they type something vague like, help me write this proposal. Then they get some sort of generic, useless response. And then it's like, they just think, okay, AI doesn't work. It's not for me. But in reality, it's only as good as what you give it. So if you give it a vague question with no context, then you get a vague answer. And if you give it specific information, like your product details, examples of what you want the output to look like, some relevant documents, then the output is completely different. And the gap between those two experiences is actually enormous and is the reason why most people sort of give up after one try. So the goal here is not to just get you using AI, but it's to get you using it properly so that it's genuinely useful right from the start. And so with that, the easiest place to start is honestly just to start with one of the more broad, capable LLMs. And if you're starting fresh and you're not committed to one already, I'd go with Claude. Now, all of the top models are genuinely quite close in terms of the outputs, like Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini. They're all good. The gap between them is much smaller than the gap between using any of them and using nothing. So if you're already on ChatGPT and it works for you, then you can just stay there. I wouldn't recommend switching for the sake of it, but I do recommend going paid from day one. So I think they're all about $20 a month now. And the reason to go paid is the free tier caps you at somewhere between 10 and 30 messages before it starts to throttle the output and essentially become useless. And it's not enough to really do any real work, like reviewing contracts or anything like that. And the free tiers, you also get weaker models. So the paid versions unlock better reasoning, larger context windows, and those features actually make a real difference. And then there's obviously the data question, and generally on free plans, they're probably using your chats to train their models, and that's just obviously not what you want at all. So moving on now, the reason why I go Claude and even consider switching to Claude is because it has a great ecosystem wrapped around it, where there are things called skills, which are a big unlock in terms of actually getting useful outputs every single time. And in a workflow, there are also things like projects where you can store context. And then they also have products like Cowork and Code, which are great for embedding it more deeply inside of your workflow once you get those ground foundations ready to go. So right now, Claude is the clear winner when it comes to essentially which model to use and which I would recommend out of the gate. So they start off with the framework around what actually works. So to actually apply AI in construction that utilizes its benefits without going down some rabbit hole of just somewhere that it's just not going to help you out. So when you look at it fundamentally, AI is best at data transformation. And that's not talking about numbers or something like that, which although that will work, it's more in the framework of like, if you give it text, it can give you better text back. If you give a document, it gives you a summary of that document. Or if you give it rough notes, it can give you a formatted report based on those rough notes. So it's input, it transforms it, and you get an output. It's not as good at making things up. So if you ask it to generate a proposal from scratch with no guidance, then it's just not going to work. So you wouldn't ask it to read a drawing and expect you to get accurate quantities or anything like that, or trust it to make decisions that have real money or safety consequences without checking the output first. So fundamentally, it's ensuring that it fits within this framework. And for example, if you're using it in the field for troubleshooting, which some people are, but the experience to understand that is still necessary. So essentially, AI gives you the information and you interpret it. If you do not have the background to know whether what it is telling you makes sense, then you can put yourself in real danger. So at the end of the day, it's a tool. It's genuinely useful tool, but it's only as good as a person using it still and the information that it's been given. So like I was saying, the best place to start and get a feel for how it reacts, how it operates, is with writing tasks. And I say writing specifically because that is what AI is best at the moment. So it's drafting, reformatting, summarizing, comparing text. You give it a messy input, it gives you a messy and clean output. It's the data transformation engine, essentially. So a good example would be if you want to write an email with a question that is contained within a spec document. What you would do at its very simplest form is upload the spec document to the chat. You would then also upload 3 well-written emails of yours that you've done in the past. And then what I do, I use a tool called Whisperflow where I can just push a button and talk to my laptop. You do a brain dump of exactly what you want to say. And then out the back of that, you're going to get essentially a polished up email that not only has context on the spec, and so what you're actually asking it for, but also has context on how you like your emails to be written. And in that way, you'll get an output that is actually genuinely useful. And that is just simply from one task. So now the next step when it comes to setting up AI is changing from what a task to workflows. Like that is useful, but how can we make it more useful? And then once you get the hang of that task type thing, then you can go from that individual task to something where it actually gets really interesting. And because individual tasks are useful, workflows are where the real benefit actually is. So a workflow is essentially a structured set of steps that takes you from a trigger to a finished output. And in Claude, you can build things called skills. And a skill is essentially a set of instructions that tells the AI exactly how to handle a specific workflow or task, step by step, what to look for, what format to use, what questions to ask, and what output to produce. So you essentially create it once, write it once, download it once, and then every time you need to do that task, you just run that skill and you know that it's got all of these steps baked into it. So instead of writing a prompt from scratch every time you need to review a contract, you have a contract review skill that knows exactly what clauses to check, what risks to flag, what questions to raise, and in what format you want that output every time. And I actually did a demo on this recently, so I'll chuck that link to that up the top. Otherwise, at the end of this video, so you can check that out and see exactly what I mean. And you can make skills for a lot of things. So things like daily site reports, change orders, RFIs, scope gap analysis, bid letters, subcontractor comparisons. Each one can be a skill, and then each skill you build or download is one less task that's eating your time. And the reason skills are so good is because you can prompt it to add humans, or you do have humans in the loop where you review its output and provide your expertise and direction, and then it continues to doing the grunt work for you, but you're giving it the strategy. So a good analogy to explain this is if you want it to do a 30-step task, which has 30 steps in a row, and at task 5 it may start going off course and away from what direction you want to go. So that means by the time it gets to step 30, it's completely useless. So if you have a check-in with it at step 5, you can make sure it's on the right track, plus add any of your own expertise, your own input, and additional context that it may need. And then you do this again at step 10, step 15, step 20, 25, and 30. And that means that the output at step 30 is going to be considerably better, and it's going to be exactly what you wanted from the start. But you won't have had to have done all the grunt work in between those steps. And that's the very, very cool thing about skills. And what's also great about skills is that you can share them, you can download them, and essentially have your whole team on them. And I'll touch more on that, how you can do that shortly. But now the next biggest unlock that you've got it using it yourself is to actually get your team involved. So you're essentially amplifying your own productivity output. Now, if you're the owner or the PM and you start using AI, that's great. But if your team doesn't know how to use it, then you're missing a large part of the benefits of this in your business as a whole. So the value multiplies when your whole team has access to it. And that means giving them the tools, but also giving them these like somewhere to actually learn how to use it for construction specifically. So not generic tutorials, something that is actually built for construction, and gives them the workflows that they can follow and shows them what a good output looks like as well for the kind of work that they're doing every day. And that's also another benefit of skills, because they're essentially a standard operating procedure for your business that's baked into it. They're reviewing it at the steps that make sense. So where you need that human expertise, that involvement to keep it going on the right track, so you can focus on doing the higher value tasks. And because the difference between someone who opens up Claude and types, help me with my job, versus someone who has actually got a structured workflow for turning field notes into daily site reports, it's massive. And yep, there's a lot of software out there that can do certain workflows or promise certain things, but you could end up stacking 20 or 30 of those on top of each other if you wanted to, when in reality, you can do a lot of it with a simple Claude subscription. So you can get a ton of value while also working within some of the software you already use, because the connections are getting better. So the simplest and cheapest and easiest way to start to get the most value is really to get one of those core LLMs and get going and understanding it. And that is exactly why we built ContractorOS. We saw this gap where contractors want to use AI, but they don't necessarily have the time to go through and figure it all out themselves from scratch. And yeah, you can go down big rabbit holes everywhere trying to find what actually really works. But really, the inside of ContractOS, you get to close that gap much quicker, because there's ready-made workflows for workflows you already do. There's skills and templates that you can just download and start using on your project straight away. And that's things like daily site reports, contract reviews, scope gap analysis, and much more. And that massively cuts down the time to get real value from AI, because you're not starting from zero. You're starting from something that already works, and you can just tweak it for exactly your business. So it's a great place to not only learn, but also have a meaningful impact from day one. So to recap, essentially is to pick a tool, and Claude is my recommendation for now, but you can get around it with ChatGPT and Gemini work too. Go paid, it's like $20 a month to start, and you can obviously increase depending on how much you use it from there. Pick a writing task and set it up with some context so you can get a good output for yourself first and start using it consistently. Then build out your workflows and start chipping away at the tasks that eat your time properly. So after that, you can then get your team educated and involved and give them the tools and somewhere to learn so that they can actually make the most out of these tools right now. And like I said, you can get your head start by joining ContractorOS, and the link is in the description. And I'll see you in the next video.